Welcome to the Hyperpolyglot Activist. Learn languages, make a difference. My name is Dr. Carlos Ibra Lopez, and I'm joined today in the Ateneo de Zamboanga University by Professor Rob Atilano de los Reyes. Rob, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me in your show.
Of course. And thank you so much for inviting me and being so welcoming and so hospitable in my visit here in Zamboanga. It's truly a pleasure and an honor. Mm-hmm. And I would like to begin this interview by asking you about how you came into contact with Chavacano.
Yeah, so Chavacano is really my first language. Both of my parents are Chavacano speakers.
Mm-hmm.
They don't even speak, their parents are also Chavacano speakers. So I don't see any mix in them. Yeah, so I grew up really just speaking Chavacano, and then only later when I got to school, I got to learn other languages. But otherwise, at home, it's a language that you speak.
And what academic projects have you done on Chavacano, whether it's articles, PhD dissertations, courses?
Yeah, for Chavacano, so far, of course, my dissertation focuses on the use of Chavacano in the teaching of English among elementary students. And then from there, I worked on translanguaging research, and that of course involved Chavacano in the process. So, but I have already covered some of the social domains where translanguaging is being used, like classroom or schools, and then translanguaging in the media, focusing on what news anchors and broadcasters, how they use translanguaging, and I think by early next year, our article on translanguaging as used by doctors with patients in one of the public hospitals here will also be released by Language, Culture, and Society.
That's a prestigious
one.
Yeah,
that's one.
Yes.
And then, my claim to fame is that I was able to translate The Little Prince into Zamboangueño Chavacano.
Yeah. Yes, let's talk about that. How was the process of translating The Little Prince into Zamboangueño Chavacano? We know Chavacano to be predominantly an oral language. So how did this idea come about? Okay. What made you take the plunge into translating The Little Prince into Chavacano? And what are some of the difficulties and maybe also rewarding moments that you experienced in the process? How long did it take you?
All right. So I have to say that it didn't start like a personal, it's a personal project. So I was commissioned to translate The Little Prince. First, it was by Eva Cipolla. She connected me with organization that needed a translation of The Little Prince into Chavacano, Zamboangueño Chavacano. Unfortunately, at that time, I couldn't finish the translation on time, and so it was not pursued by the organization. And then she connected me to Tintenfass, which is based in Germany.
Yes.
And Tintenfass just publishes all translations of The Little Prince. So basically, that translation is commissioned by Tintenfass. Yeah. So as to the process, so I tried to stay faithful to the text. I really went through sentence by sentence, and then try to understand. Because Little Prince can have different effect on certain readers. So on how it affects, how I understand it. So I translate actually sentence by sentence. So really trying to
from the original in French, or did you use other
from
versions?
English, from an English version that was provided by Tintenfass. So they provided a version. I think that's the same version that they provide to other translators. So from the English, I can't understand French, so I couldn't translate that from French. So English and then Chavacano. So the difficulties were there are just words in the Little Prince that do not have equivalents in Chavacano for reasons that they're very contextual, and they're not present in our consciousness, in our everyday life. So I ended up deciding to keep the English versions, like baobab, for example.
Yes,
You know, that's
a
one.
very specific
Yeah,
word,
so yeah, very specific words. Otherwise, if there are Spanish equivalents, and if I recall that these Spanish equivalents are also used by my family, although not frequently, I use them. Although I would say they're not common now to most Chavacano speakers, but I retain them. There was a conscious effort from my end to stay close to, not to make it too trans-language, although I know that there are terms that are not familiar, but I use whatever equivalents that I can remember. So it's still, you would see still, there are less English or Tagalog words. You can see any of those, just more of English. I'm also very particular about spelling words consistently. So I made a decision on how to spell certain words. So, for example, for words that end in "shon," right, like communication or direction. So, for "shon" that is preceded by "c," I spelled it with two C's. Dirección. But for those that are not preceded by C, I just use one C. Yeah, so that things will be consistent.
Keep consistent.
Yeah, everything consistent there. And then, but yeah, I have to say that the spelling of the other words, basically what guided me, if the words are Spanish, they came from Spanish, so I spelled the way Spanish would be spelled. Otherwise, if they're like borrowed from other languages, local languages, I spell it the way they're spelled in the local languages.
You mentioned that there was a conscious effort not to use a lot of Philippine-based vocabulary, perhaps. And in that sense, we know that there is another translation of The Little Prince, right? Whose title is already different, right? So you translated The Little Prince as in
El Príncipe Niño.
El Príncipe Niño, whereas this other author translated The Little Prince into El Diutay Príncipe. So that difference comes down to you consciously choosing not to use Diutay, or are there more elements to that decision? And what are some of the other differences that we can see between the two translations?
Okay. Although I haven't really read the other translation, but from the title, I was trying to, look for a title that's rather more appropriate in the sense that the word is used for a person. So although I know Jutay, it's commonly used to refer to small, but we often use it to refer to things. Yeah. Although in recent times, others would refer to their kid like Jutay, El Jutay, where's on the El Jutay. But it's not quite, I felt like it wasn't really for a person, so I didn't use it. So I prefer the Niño because it's more like, because it's a prince, right? So using Jutay doesn't seem to go well, prince, right? More things like that, no? Things like that. So but I also noticed, because I got a chance to see the first few lines of his translation. One difference is that I think he wasn't really looking into each sentence, but just what he probably understand and then translate that part. I noticed there's this book that's being referred in the Little Prince, like something about natural resources. He didn't like go by the title, so I tried to really keep the title and have the translated words for each. So so
it's more of a loose translation.
Yeah, loose translation. Yeah.
Great. And then when it comes to looking at the future of Chavacano, what are some of the aspects that you would like to see when it comes to revitalizing the language in the 21st century? What needs to be done concerning Chavacano as of 2026? Okay,
so it would be good if the language will continuously be used in all domains, right? But the good thing though is that in Zamboanga City, there is the language is given some kind of recognition as a identity marker. So the local government gives also emphasis to it. So you see it's being used in the linguistic landscape. Politicians will use that occasionally in their speeches. And in media we have it. But more efforts to use the language is, I think, better, and the more people will know about it, the better. So that's one. But although it's an oral language, I still believe that it will help preserve the language if it's going to be used in written form, right? In writings, for example, in writing literature, for example. So in that way, we're intellectualizing, right, the language,
yes.
right? It's not just solely used for home or day-to-day conversation. It can also be used for something more formal. Like I'm even contemplating of, translating my research article into Chavacano just to see whether it can be used,
to claim the scientific domain as well.
Right,
So,
to see how it works, so really exploring whatever communicative event.
That's very interesting because, in the US, some people who learned English and operating at US universities consciously choose to publish in Spanish to give more scientific currency to Spanish, and therefore fight against the colonial prejudice that is Spanish, in the US at least, is not a language for science.
Right. Although I have to recognize that in the process, I will have to use use English terms as well, because I'm not gonna force having everything translated into Spanish sounding words.
Exactly.
Right? So I'm also for the pragmatic side of using language, like communication. So whatever is easier to be understood, more effective and more efficient, I'll go for that.
Yes, because there is the risk of conflating Spanish-only vocabulary with purity, right?
Right.
Whereas we know that Philippines is very diverse when it comes to language, and obviously the U.S. influence in the Philippines, whether it is political, linguistic, etc., is historically a fact, right? So it's not borrowing, for instance, English into, say, Danish or Dutch. So it makes sense. Any expressions in Chavacano that you would like to share with our audience? Expressions that have caught your attention or that people who have visited Zamboanga have always found entertaining or interesting?
I haven't really encountered visitors asking me about certain expressions. Like how people from other linguistic groups, if they are exposed to a new language, usually they would ask, how do you say I love you to someone? The common things. But there's this one expression that I inherited perhaps from my mother. Like when you commit a mistake, she would say, coco, or something like that. Coco. Coco is coconut, diba? So coconut. So it's like an expression saying, you just did something not right. It's just an expression.
So like saying, oh no?
Oh no, coco, something like that.
Very interesting,
so I don't know why coco, but I don't know why it is. But that's one expression that.
And you said you heard it at home. Have you heard it anywhere else, or it's just something that reminds you of your family?
It's basically at home. I haven't heard from others really using that. Although there could be others, like using it. But at home, that's one expression that I commonly use, and my mother too. Yeah.
Very interesting. Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome,
Professor Rob, for this interview. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for all your help, and I hope that Chavacano continues to grow and to attract interest.
Right. Thank you too.
Thank you.
Thank
Gracias.
you.
Gracias, Gayot.
Yeah, you're welcome.